I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane, here with my colleague, Brenda Lyle Gray. She's a columnist and writer for Insight News, and my sidekick on these shows, monitoring what I call robust conversations, interactions between our team and thought leaders, business leaders, youth leaders, cultural leaders, exploring the world, our world, and our vision of a future in which we win. Brenda, how you doing, my friend?
I'm fine. Good afternoon, Al McFarlane.
Good afternoon. I want to say kudos to you on the excellent work you continue to do with me and with Insight News. Let people know that you've got major stories in the upcoming edition, Monday's edition of the newspaper. You can actually see it online, not online, but you can get the electronic copy available now at issue.com, issuu.com/Insight News. So that's the first early look at the upcoming Monday edition of Insight News. And if you get that, what you're going to discover is a couple of stories that Brenda worked on. I worked on with her. They're not byline stories, but they are reports of the comments made by the incumbent mayor of St. Paul, Melvin Carter, the incumbent mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey. Mayor Carter and Mayor Frey both seeking re-election. The election merely a week or so away, 2 weeks away, November 2nd. We have been, for the past several months now, on every Monday, talking with candidates for city council. And we are pleased to bring that discussion before the people. We think that we owe it to ourselves to be informed, to be aware, and to find out what distinguishes candidate A from candidate B, and to always be in a position to articulate what our interests are. What does it mean to us? What does it do to move our community, our families, our culture forward? This paper coming up includes our early endorsement, or part one of our endorsements. Insight is announcing, and this will be the first digital announcement of it, Brenda. We're announcing that Insight News is endorsing Mayor Melvin Carter for re-election to the office of Mayor of St. Paul. We are announcing in this edition that Insight News is endorsing Mayor Jacob Frey for his bid for re-election to the mayor of Minneapolis. We also will be sharing our endorsements of other candidates for city council in particular on our website as early as Monday, and in the next edition of Insight News, which breaks on November 1st, before the election, November 2nd. So stay tuned. And we just know this is important. This is a watershed moment. I mean, all the conversations we've had, Brenda, have been conversations about the impact of George Floyd, the impact of the coronavirus. And nobody can escape that discussion, because nobody can escape the consequences of either. What do you think about that?
I've just been so impressed, and being an outsider, I've just been so impressed with the candidates. Of course, I don't know that much about Carr, except his achievements have been impressive.
Carter, you mean?
Yeah, I've always been a fan of Jacob Frey. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the reasons, and not knowing him personally, is he was a young man that was just on the global front, boom, and had to handle so many things. And kudos to you, Al McFarlane, for being by his side. I just thought that was just so big when he said, had to find Al McFarlane first. And you were by his side in all of those important events, the trial, the verdict, all of it. And I just think that was just really good. And the candidates, oh my goodness, I went back to school. They're brilliant.
Yeah.
They are brilliant. And I just so appreciate having the opportunity to learn so much from them. I was just blown away. And even with AJ Flowers yesterday in our interview,
Mhm.
candid.
Wasn't that amazing?
I'm
Wasn't it
saying,
amazing?
bravo. Are
Yeah.
you your daddy's son?
Yep.
He told the truth.
Yep.
You didn't explain anything to me about a ballot initiative. There was no clarification. There
Mhm.
was just 9 city councilmen saying, defund the police.
Mhm.
Nobody told us anything. I loved it. I just loved it. So kudos.
Well, let's put your comments in context too, Brenda. Thank you so much. When the mayor called, and both mayors said this, and I appreciate their comments, it's important for this reason, not because uh, it's not personal, that's number one, but
That's
what,
true.
what is important is that Mayor Carter and Mayor Fry recognize the presence and the value of the Black press of America. I see Yusuf is on. Bring Yusuf in. Come on in, Yusuf. And so they recognize the power and uh, the organic, um, you know, organics involved in the relationship between us as expressed by and through our own information infrastructure, the Black press of America. So you were saying that, acknowledging that Mayor Fry, on several occasions, has come forward saying, thanks Insight News and thanks Al McFarlane. And I say, of course, humbly, appreciate any kind of comments, but it's not about Al McFarlane, it's about me as representing the Black press, the voice of Black people, and the
And
perspective
he
of Black
said that
people.
over and over. He means that sincerely. He
And not
knows
only,
that he can't operate in that sphere without having that power
there we
of
go.
Black leadership.
That's it, exactly it. And
Mhm.
Mayor Carter has been the same. Mayor Carter has been persistent. Mayor Fry has been persistent in reaching out to the Black community among other venues, but through the Black press. I can tell you that in history, most white politicians, even those that called themselves our friends, have been and remain dismissive. There are some who are Black who also devalue the information infrastructure in the Black community, that they take their sense of power and their sense of validation from the white press and white people. And so they will not take the time to talk to an Insight News or one of our Black
Wow.
other newspapers or radio stations, figuring that it doesn't matter. It's just us. But they are elated to be called downtown and given a chance to explain their existence or to take orders about their existence from white people. So I fault them. I criticize them for that, and I criticize us for allowing it. But I say that this kind of conversation is one that we have to demand and to expect of ourselves, that we are accountable and that we speak our truths to ourselves and to the universe. Yusuf, you and I go back a generation or two now, and both
the Twin Cities Black Communications Group
in the fire, bringing
back in the
story,
70s.
our viewpoint. And so
I just seen you, Yusuf.
And you, dear. I had a little trouble getting in, but I'm here now.
Good. I'm so glad to see you. I've missed hearing from you. I would send my boss all these questions, and it was like, ask Yusuf this, and what about Kamala, and what about all of this? So I've got all these things stored up. I'm going to have to email you and ask you.
Anytime. Anytime, dear.
Bring your camera down a little bit, Brenda,
okay,
so that you get, there we go, you frame perfectly. Excellent. Yusuf, how you doing? What's on your mind, man? So let's riff on this conversation first. I want to riff on the obligation that the demand that we have to make of our electeds, that they communicate to us where and how we want to be communicated to, that they cannot operate on the presumption that since they told white people that we got it, or they don't have to make an effort to talk to us where we say we want to be talked to. What do you think about that?
Well, that's historically been
I
the
was getting ready
case,
to say that. Yeah.
and it's not just in the mayor's office. It's at most levels of elected politicians,
Yep.
city, state, county, and it goes across the board. I remember a time when there were open lines of communication within the Black community and within the community of elected and appointed officials, where there was good communication. Some considered it riot insurance, but nonetheless, there was access. That access also existed to a large extent with the corporate and foundation giving community, with the, I call them the fat boys in the canoe, the white power structure, who were at least in contact with somebody in the community who was not averse to sharing information. And I think a lot of our politicians today focus on their data-driven and mission-informed. And what I'm referring to is when they were mission-driven and data-informed. They don't just look at the zip codes where people vote and say, that's my priority, that's who I'm going to be accountable to. But they look at the mission of inclusion and representation and who they represent. And they're committed to that, and they're informed by the data, but they're not driven so much by the electoral data about who votes. In St. Paul, and west of Lexington is what carries referendums and elections, and in Minneapolis, it's southwest.
Our community in St. Paul is everything east of Lexington, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And in Minneapolis, it's essentially the same picture.
Mm-hmm.
But no, you're absolutely right. I did catch the second half of the conversation, and I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Mm-hmm.
What's on my mind is the John Lewis Voting Rights Advocacy Act. Okay, and Angus King, who is the senator from Maine, says that voting rights and voting suppression are at the most critical point in terms of being a threat to democracy since 1860, because many states, through their legislatures, are advancing legislation which will allow a Republican-controlled legislature to override the results of an election and say, we want to send electors to the nation's capital to elect the next president who we feel represent us, not the winner of the popular election that was held in November. And that's occurring across the country. Now, Senator Joe Manchin, who along with Senator Christian Sinema from Arizona, Manchin is from West Virginia, have been the two Democratic senators blocking the passage of the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and also the president's social infrastructure bill of several $1 trillion. And Manchin had the nerve to say, the problem is that progressives wrote the bill, and they wrote it such that it does not appeal to Republicans. So I'm going to write the bill myself and introduce it and work across the aisle and get it passed because I'm committed to voting rights. Well, he wrote his own draft legislation, and yesterday in the United States Senate, they had a vote on whether or not to even discuss a voting rights bill. Guess how many Republicans voted for it?
I bet you zero.
You got it. You win the rose. Not a single one.
Mm-hmm.
And Manchin insisted that the previous version of the bill did not appear to Republicans, but that he knew exactly what they needed, and he was going to take it upon himself to rewrite the bill so that Republicans would vote for it. Now, in order to avoid a filibuster, you need 60 votes. And because it's a 50-50 split, or thereabouts,
Mhm.
depending on what the issue is, you would need 10 Republicans in the Senate to vote for any bill that had been approved by the House in order for it to pass. Now, here's the trick. You need 60 votes to pass legislation, but you don't need 60 votes to filibuster. You only need 41, okay? And all you have to do is say you have the 41 and the filibuster is in place. Now, 41 Republican senators who represent 24% of the population of the United States can call a filibuster and block any legislation that they choose to, okay? Now that means that these 41 Republican senators who represent 24% of the American public can override the wishes of 76% of American voters. So if the polls
That's scary.
that 76% of the people support background checks, support voters' rights, do not support voter suppression, support the social infrastructure bill, these 41 senators can block it from ever becoming law. And you got to ask yourself, what's wrong with this picture? You know, I mean, California's got 40 million people, and they've got 2 senators. North and South Dakota might have 1 million between them, and they have 2 senators. This whole electoral college piece is crippling, you know, the process. And this filibuster piece, you know, Manchin's got egg on his face because he claimed he could write a voter rights, you know, bill that would appeal to Republicans. Biden is cutting back on clean electricity, on extending the Child Care Act to 2024, Child Care Tax Credit to 2025. He's scaling back on free community college education for any adult that wants to go. And it's talking about increasing Pell Grants while it's, you know, laudable, is still short. And they're probably, if the social infrastructure bill gets a hearing, it will be cut 50%. And so the progressives are saying that Biden has been focusing more on pleasing Joe Manchin and Christian Sinema in order to get these policies passed. That has made it very difficult for the progressives in both houses of Congress to come to his aid and start, you know, marketing and supporting these proposals, particularly the ones that will benefit the poor. And there have been 4, I'm gonna say this and then I'm a hush.
No, keep talking. This is fascinating yourself. You got the
There
floor.
have been 498 pieces of legislation as of a month ago that were introduced in state legislatures in 48 states to limit the ability to vote by Black and brown and poor people, what we call voter suppression. They're doing away with early voting. They're doing away with mail-in ballots. They're doing away with making Election Day a holiday. They're doing away with everything that was an incentive for the people who vote to least to come out and vote. And it's real, you know, I mean, one judge in throwing out one of former President Trump's complaints about voter fraud said, look, even Ray Charles could see that this thing is race related and that you're trying to prevent Black and brown and poor people from coming to the polls. They shut down 38 early polling sites in the Carolinas. And you know how many that left open? 1. And you know how long it was open? 1/2 of a day every month. Okay. And they were all in African American communities. So yeah, even Ray Charles could see that that was race related. The judge was absolutely correct. And this business of the Republican controlled state legislatures saying, we don't like the results of the election for whoever was elected by the popular vote. So we're going to pick our own electors to go to Washington, D.C. to select the president that we choose, not the one that the voters choose.
Dangerous.
That could happen as early as next year.
Dangerous.
And if it does, the race war that a lot of people on the right have been prophesizing and promoting might well be upon us. And like Angus King said, this is the greatest threat to democracy since 1860, which is when the seeds of the Civil War were planted and came to fruition. So we really need to bang the drums and shake the bushes and get our folks out to vote, regardless of whether it's for dog catcher or city council or school board or referendum this or public safety that. It is critical, absolutely critical.
Yusef, can I ask you something real quick?
Please.
I
apologize for running on.
I saw on The View where they talked about the filibuster when the 1964 voter suppression or
Voting Rights Act.
Voting Rights Act was passed.
Mm-hmm.
And Whoopi was talking about the fact that they just got rid of the filibuster, and that was the way it got passed.
Correct. But you still need a supermajority in order to be able to do that.
And they got the majority.
Yeah, you can do it for specific issues. Something needs to be. But see, here's the thing. Mitch McConnell is chomping at the bit because he would love to see the filibuster eliminated, because in doing so, it would mean that all you need is a simple majority, 51 votes.
That's what I thought.
To pass any legislation. And if the Republicans, and I'm just being factual, I'm not trying to be partisan, gain the majority, at least 51 seats in the Senate in 2, 4, or 6 years, because it swings back and forth like a pendulum. The Democrats have the majority, the Republicans. And the idea of the filibuster was to protect the rights of the party that was, there's no process in democracy to protect the rights of the minority, any minority. And the filibuster was created for that reason, that said you need a bipartisan effort to override a filibuster. And Mitch McConnell is chomping at the bits, and he would love to see it eliminated, because what did Donald Trump accomplish legislatively when he succeeded Barack Obama? What did he do for 4 years consistently? What did he undo? Let me ask that question. Everything that Barack Obama went through executive order.
Yeah. And then Donald took Trump, his portrait down. He didn't even want to look at him.
And he tried his darndest to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, what we call Obamacare. And I got to tell you this because it's funny. I was watching the news, national news, and they were interviewing some people who were protesting Obamacare. And they were interviewing a guy, and they said, well, is it the prescription coverage? He said, oh, no, we love that. He said, is it the pre-existing conditions? He said, oh, no, it wouldn't be any good without that. He said, well, is it the fact that, you can choose? And oh, no, we got to have all that. And so the journalist said, well, what seems to be the problem with Obamacare? And the white man said, it's the Obama part. Okay?
I read that.
And that's the bottom line.
That he was black.
And the reason we're going through Joe Biden and this social infrastructure is because of the tax on people that make $1 billion a year or more, and a tax on corporations, and a tax on companies that buy back their stock. Okay, and they need more tax, benefits. Like Carter needs more peanuts. Because Biden has to come up with a way to pay for this social infrastructure so it doesn't drive the debt load up any higher. But it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And it's being done very subtly and very publicly. And a lot of people are unaware of it and seemingly unconcerned about it. The machinations. And we've talked earlier about the 30-year plans that the right-wing billionaires and the ultra-conservatives had to regain the Supreme Court, state legislatures, school boards, city councils, and all of these offices across the country. Now, we know what's the group in Florida, Al, that sends out the legislation every 2 weeks to every Republican state legislator in the country?
Is it Alex?
Alex, the American Legislative Exchange Council. Mm-hmm. There's another group dedicated to county commissioners and county executives from this same group of folks, you know, the Caucus, the Bradley Foundation, the Mellon Foundation. They call them the Four Sisters. These four very wealthy right-wing foundations, and also a number of conservative individuals who are saying it's not just good enough at the state level, we got to get down to the city and county level and expand, you know, the protections. Look at what they did with Kavanaugh, and look at what they did with the other guy. They nominated and appointed Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court in 21 days.
Yep, unheard of.
And the last one, Obama had 14 months left in his term as president, and Mitch McConnell refused to have a hearing on the guy who is the Attorney General. What is his name right now?
Garrett.
Yeah,
Merrick Garland.
Merrick Garland.
Yeah. That
Barack Obama nominated for the Supreme Court, and there were less than 2 months left in Trump's term when Kavanaugh was, when they held the hearings and appointed him to the Supreme Court. So they stole 2 Supreme Court seats. Okay, and we now have a 6-3 majority, 6 of the Supreme Court justices being appointed by presidents. And let me just give you a brief history lesson. I'm sorry, you know, this John Coltrane did a solo one time, and Miles Davis said, "Man, how come you played so long?" And Trane said, "I'm sorry, brother, it just took that long to get it all out." From 1789 to 1850, okay, 1789 to 1850, 80% of U.S. presidents owned slaves, 8 of them while they were in the White House, okay? Now, we'll take it a step further. 18 of the first 31 Supreme Court justices owned who? Slaves, okay? So when we talk about the Constitution, when we talk about the founding of this country, whose interests were being served, whose interests were being protected, who were they looking out for, okay? So we all know that Make America Great Again meant Make America White Again.
Mm-hmm.
And these strict constitutionalists, what's this society? The Federalist Society consists of a group of lawyers and judges who are to the right of Attila the Hun, okay? And anytime there's an opening on the Supreme Court, they give a list to the Republicans in the Senate. They gave Donald Trump a list. That's how Kavanaugh got elected. That's how the other guy got elected. You know, the Federalist Society. I mean, these folks are not conservative. They're not right-wing. They are extremists, okay? They're literal interpreters of the Constitution. And they believe that we ought to go back to 1776 and put this bad boy back into its original form. And they've got, I think, 34 states that have Republican governors, and they need 4 more to call a constitutional convention. And there are 10 amendments that they want to introduce to take away the rights of citizens to elect their representatives in Congress and the Senate. And they want to do 9 other things that are completely off the charts. The needle won't go far enough right to check where the amendments are that they want to introduce. And if they get 4 more Republican governors, they can call a constitutional convention and they can introduce and adopt these 10 amendments, to Google them, to the Constitution that will make Vladimir Putin look like Dr. Martin Luther King in terms of the way that our country is run and the powers of the party in control of the federal government. So I rest my case. This nation time.
This is such a wonderful conversation, and I actually want to keep you talking down the path that you're on, because the question has to be raised: to what end? You've described all of these horrors, these traps that are being set and that are re-emerging. These are tools that have been used in the past to suppress our opportunity, our freedom, our culture, our humanity, our lives, as a matter of fact, and to try to hardwire white privilege and the colonialist power, the imperial power, the supremacist ideology in this country and in the world. And so as you described what's actually on the legislative agenda and set of possibilities for the country, answer the question, to what end? Where do you see them? And you can say who they are. Where you see them trying to get to? Where are they trying to go? And then,
well, I've mentioned two books, Democracy in Chains and Dark Money, that spell this stuff out, going all the way back to Brown v. Board of Education. Okay, and that's when they ran Goldwater for president, and he got stomped in the election. And they said, instead of trying simply to get people elected, we need to change the law so it doesn't matter who's in power, they'll be doing our bidding. And the Republicans laid out a 30-year plan for how they intended to do this. And what was the law that passed that allowed corporations and individuals to give as much money as they wanted to political action committees? You know the one I'm referring to? Come on,
I do. I don't remember the name of it, but yeah, sure.
But that has really tilted the entire electoral landscape, because they can pump tens of millions of dollars into specific campaigns. They can't give it to the candidate, but they can give it to a political action committee who supports the candidate, who can buy ads, who can create attack ads to support the opponents of the people who they want to get elected. And they can do, Trump only lost winning the entire state of Minnesota over Hillary Clinton, for crying out loud, by 1.5 percentage points. Okay, we could have been a red state just that easily. Okay, and when you look at how close the election Biden was, the same thing was true. We were one state away from losing one of our representatives in Congress. One of the 8 would have had to go bye-bye. Okay, because of the census counts, because states that got a higher birth rate and more in-migration were able to add a congressional representative, and the states that either lost or remained stagnant got one taken away, because there can only be so many senators and so many congressmen.
Great.
But they spelled it out, and it's about white supremacy. Okay, it's about white power. It's about eliminating any sense of democracy for people who don't own property, people who are not in the middle class or upper class. And when you look at the income inequality and the wealth distribution, during the recession, the total wealth of 0.1% of the top people in this country has skyrocketed, okay? While the wealth of people on the bottom has gone down. I'll give you one other real clear example that everybody can understand, okay? The home ownership rate for Black families in Minnesota is lower today than it was in Mississippi in the 1950s, okay? And up until 2008, the home ownership rate for Black families in the state of Minnesota was 27%. You know what it was after the Wall Street crash in 2008? What it is now? 21 or 22%. Okay, so we've lost
wealth,
a quarter of the home ownership in the African American community, and a lot of white families are speculating and buying homes in the hood all over North Minneapolis, Summit U, the east side, the north end, the west side, the south side, and they put their kids in there and they go to college, and then 4 years later they put them back on the market for twice what they paid for them, and they put in about $5,000 or $10,000 to beef up the kitchen and the security systems, obviously. But it's called tier financing. You put in a little to get out a lot. Okay, and then when you put it back on the market, hey, we've gentrified this community. And look at Western and Selby in St. Paul. Used to be single room occupancy apartments. Now it's all townhouses, condominiums. It's crazy. And I saw a sign on a lamppost. I live near Lexington and Selby, okay, between Selby and Summit. Saw a sign on a lamppost the other day that said, "Welcome to Cathedral Hill." I said, "I beg your pardon?" You know, when it was Summit Dale, all you did was treat your kids how to stay the hell out of here.
Right.
When it was Summit University, you said, well, you know, if you're on the edge of the hood, you might be all right. Now they're trying to claim the black community as Cathedral Hill in St. Paul. So what's that creek that ran through Sumner Olson? Is that what they're going to call your neighborhood next?
Bassett Creek.
Are you going to live in Bassett Creek, brother?
Bassett Creek neighborhood, or they tried to
Or
create
Theodore Worth.
a new name for it, calling it Know Me, North Minneapolis. We call it North Side, right? Black people got the North Side nomenclature.
Yeah.
North Side, you know,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So you know somebody's from here,
And
depending how they say it.
And
But
the governor lives on Summit Avenue. I said, Tim, you live in public housing in the hood. Let's be honest about it, okay? So from you need to say from Rondo to the Range, okay? Those are my priorities because you live in the Rondo community. Summit University, Subbydale, call it what you want. You live in the hood and you live in public housing because you live in the governor's mansion. So
I'm getting sick. Yusuf, I have a question though.
yes,
I sent Al a couple headlines today. Mitch McConnell also was on the news a couple hours ago, and he has sent a stiff letter to Trump to tell Trump, I'm done, cut it out. We're about winning elections.
Let it go. You know?
Let it go, or else we're going to suffer. And I'm saying,
well, here's what happened. Here's what drove that. Trump did a tweet or whatever he does and said, I'm encouraging Republicans not to vote in the next election. Okay.
In 2022,
to show their protest for the voter fraud that stole the White House from me. You know, and he's saying, don't worry, I'll be back in the White House by Thanksgiving. Okay. And then have they had that anniversary of the January 6th terrorist resurrection at the Capitol yet? Yeah. You know, I mean, they had a rally in Washington, D.C., or they planned one. I lost interest in it, to celebrate the January 6th terrorist uprising on the steps of the United States Capitol.
About 25 people showed up.
Oh, my goodness gracious. Yeah.
No one showed up.
See, here's the good news. Some of these folks, I don't want to say they're stuck on stupid, but the president could do no wrong. And if he tells them not to vote in the next election,
they would not vote.
Okay, so that's what got, because Mitch McConnell is part of this 30-year plan. You know, they want to make it a 50-year plan and prevent Democrats from ever regaining a majority in the United States Senate.
But they're also afraid of those files from January 6th surfacing. I told Al that he's done everything. He is filed every lawsuit he could because they don't want that truth to come out. Because if it comes out.
That's part of his history though, Brenda. Okay.
Yeah, I know.
He's been suing everybody and the dog catcher since 1952. Okay. He never pays his subcontractors on time. And he sues them, takes them to court, and they don't have the money or the time to be spending 18 months fighting him. They just write it off as a bad debt. You know what I mean?
My goodness.
Donald Trump has never built nothing, has never owned nothing. He sells his brand, his name. And you know the number one thing that would hurt his ability to make money? Running for re-election and losing. And he hasn't been there and done that. Okay? His super golf club resorts have lost money. He made tens of millions of dollars from staying in his hotel, at his resorts, at his golf courses when he was in the presidency. His son claimed he was only charging $50 a night for the Social Security to stay overnight. You know, the detail that the 100 people that have to go with him when he goes anywhere. You know how much they were charging? $3,000 a night. Okay. At his properties. Yes. Okay. Unbelievable.
Stick up.
Where do you get off? You know? And I mean, his daughter had a meeting at Trump, whatever it is, bazaar in D.C. Used to be a post office or something. They turned it into a hotel. She spent $36,000 on flowers for the luncheon and sent the bill to the federal government. Okay? That's a lot of lunch, you know, if that's all the flowers cost.
Yeah.
Okay?
And so you said
Why are Black Americans not saying anything? Why are they not doing anything?
Well, I'm going to give you an answer that you may not like, Brenda.
That's
Because
okay.
we place high trust in teachers, preachers, and elected officials, okay? And we feel we have a lot of confidence that they will represent us and that they will do their job. And I got to tell you, the performance of the Congressional Black Caucus has really been disappointing, okay? Because they have gone along with the program, you know? And
But why?
With the exception of several, because they want to get reelected, with the election of several individuals, you know, who have stood out and stood up, okay, and talked back as a group, you know. There's an Asian caucus in the Minnesota State Legislature, you know, that has how many members, Al? About a dozen?
Could be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And how many Black legislators do we have? 3 or 4?
About 4, maybe 5. Maybe 5. Yeah.
Okay. And
one in the Senate, I think 4 in the House.
These folks have a coalition. They're taking care of business. They're voting as a block. They're able to go in and make demands and say, if you want our support, here's what we need. Okay. Talk to us when you're ready to play ball. Okay. And they're not saying call us when the pie is sitting on the windowsill cooling. They're saying call us when you sit down at the table and negotiate on the recipe.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that
And
we'll
you know,
know.
Al, I think you were talking about the Vietnamese group that was up on Broadway and how they handled their business and how they talked to Lee. I remember an interview you did, and that was just impressive. But they knew how to talk and they knew how to make demands.
You certainly knew, you know, when we were over in St. Paul, when Insight was over on University Avenue.
Sure.
422. Yeah. Not in the Asian Press Building, but across the street. We're in the it's called the International Marketplace on the I think it's on the south side of University Avenue. But who was in that building? Me, the Latino newspaper, which was called
You're talking about University in Franklin, or
no, over in St. Paul, University and Western.
Western?
Yeah. Western. Yeah.
Was the Asian Press in that same complex?
They were in that same building at first, and they bought the building across the street where it used to be a diner or something like that across the street down the corner. Yeah. But at first it was the Asian Press and me and La Prensa de Minnesota. And we brought in our colleague from the Anishinaabe News, the Ojibwe News, the White Earth Reservation newspaper. And we all set up shop inside that building. But I was telling Brenda in one of the programs before that Wynn and I were business partners on several deals. One, we owned a travel agency together called Skyline Travel. 2,
he had a health clinic too, right?
He had a health clinic, not me. That was his business. He and I had a graphics company together, and he and I were the principals in the creation of the Minnesota, at first, Minority Media Coalition. Sure. We changed to the present name, Minnesota Multicultural Media Consortium.
I've used it on a number of occasions to buy ads in all the papers through you.
Absolutely. And so what we did back in the day was I would hang out with him and go to the Asian community, the Vietnamese community meetings that they would have on a regular annual basis. And I shared in a program, I think, or told Brenda about how impressed I was that they met as a group and took stock of how many businesses they had. Huh?
Was this the clan councils?
No, the clan councils would be more Hmong. I'm talking about the Vietnamese. This was before the Hmong had arrived in force.
Okay.
So early on, University Avenue, Summer University was shifting, and the Vietnamese were emerging, and they became the conduits for enabling the arrival of the Hmongs for us to discover some friction between the Vietnamese and the Hmong, and the Hmong feeling that they kind of were let down and were used for not being accorded the respect they deserved because they fought on behalf of the South Vietnamese and certainly on behalf of the U.S. CIA. Yeah. They prosecuted the secret war, right?
General Vang Pao.
Yep. And so, but before those players all emerged and that community swelled to the size that it is, because that's where the power is now in the Asian community. It's in the Hmong population.
90,000.
it was the Vietnamese first. And that's the group that I connected with. And selling Brenda attended their annual gatherings. And what was impressive is that they would have different leaders in different economic sectors come up and say, here's stock of what we're doing. We're doing 20 businesses like this, 12 businesses like that. The goal for next year is from not 20 up to 30, from 12 up to 25. And I said, isn't this cool?
It was impressive.
At some point
it
in
was
time,
so impressive.
Yusuf, we have to figure out how we take stock in our community, take stock in the African American and African community, give account for what we've done individually and collectively in the spirit of advancing possibilities and opportunities and creating expectations. What do you think?
I'm gonna tell you a secret, Al, and I'm gonna try and be brief, but I have a friend who one time asked a prominent Jewish person, he said, who's the leading Jew in your community? And the Jewish person's response was, in what area? Okay. And he proceeded to explain, we have a Jewish leader in medicine, we have one in politics, we have one in education, we have one in, and went on to list about 24. And he said each of them has a committee of elders that they report to and who sign off on whatever statements they make on behalf of the Jewish community. Okay. And our history would suggest that the model that has been allowed to develop within the Black community is who is the head Negro in charge. Okay. And that creates tension and competition. And you can't have one person in charge of everything. Okay. But the Jewish model, the Vietnamese model, and the Hmong model with the clans, there are 90,000 Hmong in Minnesota and western Wisconsin. And the organization is called the 13 clans, or however many there are. And that elder in that clan has a council that he represents and reports to. And they make collective decisions. When somebody needs a new car, everybody chips in $100, okay? And they pay cash for it and get a big discount. They don't sign up for
I wrote about that. That blew me away. I mean, they all come together. And the Somalians do the same thing. With what little they have, they come together.
The Muslim religion forbids paying interest. Okay, they're required to come together. So the Southeast Asian community, the Hmong community, you know what they're doing? They're buying up all the fourplexes in the neighborhood. And I'm not saying that pejoratively. The grandparents live in one unit, the parents live in another unit, the kids live in one unit, and when the cousins and the relatives come in from out of town, they stay in the other unit, okay? And because they still practice that extended family, I don't want to say village lifestyle, but it's extended family. It say it takes a village to raise a child. Well, they've got these mini villages all over the hood and all over the community because they've been buying these fourplexes and the clan will buy it, okay? And they'll put this family in there, this one. And the Muslims, Farrakhan used to say, self and kind, brother, self and kind. And that's what it's about. In the Jewish community, kosher means blessed and cut by the rabbi, okay? They're gonna spend their money somewhere kosher, okay, if they're gonna spend it, okay? Now me, I'm into service, and I go over to South Minneapolis to get new soles and heels put on my shoes. And it takes me 20, 25 minutes to get over there, but the boy does such a good job. The shoes are better than new when I get them back. He shines them, he deodorizes them, he polishes them, he does beautiful half soles, beautiful heels, and they last forever, okay? And I paid a lot of money for them, so I want to get them redone. It ain't like we used to pay $5.99 for them at Hills Brothers when we were kids.
Payless shoes, yeah.
You know what? I still don't understand the silence. Al had me tuning in on this podcast on philanthropy. We've been working with this young man, Sean Lewis, who is just so impressive.
I appreciate the information.
You know Sean, don't you?
Yeah.
But in this podcast, $22 billion in philanthropy has been given per year. And do you know how much Blacks get of that 22 billion is 6. And so I asked the girl, I said, when all of this was presented, because I flipped through the 90-page document that they had online, and I saw nothing on disparities. I said, when you presented all of this, did you show the gaps? Did you show? And because these biggies had all of these millions of dollars and headlines, and after George Floyd, they were given millions of dollars, and they haven't given jack.
No, they gave enough to take a busload of people to White Castle. $6
billion out of 22, and probably not all of that. And I guess
you're talking about how much was committed, not how much has been granted.
I guess, but we didn't get it. Our Black community did not get it.
They're probably rolling in the $2 billion that was pledged after George Floyd's murder.
I'm going to have a hard time itching at trying to write this because I don't understand it. I don't understand the silence.
You should talk to the Minnesota Council on Nonprofits. It used to be the Philanthropy Project before it became the Minnesota Council on Nonprofits, and they did research on the top 40 foundations in Minnesota. Okay, and the amount of money that was going to programs that served women and girls, people of color, the elderly, and low income, and single moms was not enough to spit in your hand with. It was embarrassing. And the Minnesota Council on Nonprofit can steer you toward more accurate information. The other trick, Brenda.
Was that John Pratt over there? Is that who was over there?
John Pratt is retiring.
Okay.
He retired this past, when was the 19th? Was it Wednesday?
Mm-hmm.
Tuesday?
Okay.
He retired last Tuesday.
He was there, right?
He
was there, right?
Yeah, I was one of the founders.
Yeah.
But
I just don't understand why. I thought about when Al and I was growing up, and there was an incident that Dr. Bravada Garrett Akinsanya told about these young kids that had gotten into a fight, and they took them away with the police and whatever. And I'm saying, if that had happened when we were growing up in Santa Fe Place, there would have been picket signs. They would have been downtown to the city hall. I mean, it just would not have gotten away. And I don't understand the silence. Why aren't we doing something about this?
Can I say two things, Brenda?
I'm sorry. I'm gonna shut up.
No, dear. No. You're doing fine. I need to say them before I forget them, because I got a lot of stuff going on in my head. Women can multitask. You can have 8 drawers of a file cabinet open with 200 files in each one. Me and Al can only deal with 1 file and 1 drawer at a time. Okay. And if we don't do it right away.
I'm not going to say that, Yusef. He multitasks, and then he fusses at me.
It's the way that men and women process information. And Al has to get a hold of you as soon as he thinks of it and share it with you, right?
I know.
Yeah.
Love it.
So here's 2 things. One, you need to look at the governing boards of the group the money is given to. None of them that goes to programs for girls. There's all men on the board of directors. The money that goes
and
to support communities of color is white people on the board deciding and defining how that money is going to be used. The other piece is that a lot of these groups help people in our communities stand on their own 2 knees. Okay, you understand what I'm saying?
That's a good one.
They help them stand on their own 2 knees. All right, and they give them enough to get by, but not enough to get over.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm working with is Celeste Fraction, who's doing the research piece at the Urban League. I'm on her advisory committee, and I keep sending her studies and research and stuff that she can put up on the web to help educate people, because it has educated me, and it's out there. You just got to get it. People are silent because they don't have the information.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have the background. They don't get it in the Star Tribune, the Pioneer Press. Okay. What % of our community subscribes or reads Insight or the other press of color. You know, I mean, I've got 10 or 12 news services. I subscribe to the New York Times, the Washington Post,
1%
the Los Angeles
inside?
Times. You know, I mean, you can hurt yourself if you don't know what's going on out there.
Oh my
And a lot of
goodness.
our people are making poor decisions because they don't have good information. But you got to look at whether or not the organizations who get the money are constituency governed. Okay, United Way has cut $3 million from the Minneapolis Urban League. It's now the Twin Cities Urban League.
Mhm.
Who is that money going to? Okay, is there another organization providing those much needed services, Al?
Well, I'm on the board of United Way. So
Peter Hayden is doing chemical health, mental health. He's not getting the county contracts and the money to deal with that in our community.
He couldn't even get money to help the veterans.
Where's the money going to? You know, is it going to constituency governed organizations? Because the Urban League, Turning Point, you know, are constituency governed organizations. The people on the board who make the policy decisions and who set up the mission statement and the strategic plan and the action items are the people who are in tune with the pulse of the beneficiaries. Okay, they know where the money is needed and how it's going to help most. All right, and when I was at the Urban Coalition, we were a research-based advocacy organization, and you should have seen some of the white people in foundations and corporate giving programs when I would go in to get money. I would say, research, I've got a performance review coming up. You know, I mean, what are you trying to do to my future in this place? You know, and it was like I asked for their daughter's hand in marriage or their sons or something. You know, and I just had to shake my head. We went to the state of Minnesota, and we got the same response: research, black, brown, red, and yellow home ownership. Is you out of your mind? Are you on drugs? Why would we fund that? You know, and I'm saying somebody needs to fund it. Ain't nobody doing it.
Yusuf, it goes back to what I always say, and Brenda's quoted me on this already. You know, the principle, the practice is we get the misery, they get the money. Yeah. Our misery becomes their business. Is that new? No, that's what slavery was. Permanent, institutional, legalized misery for Black people, right? Misery at the point of death, right? And misery without end and without escape, sun up to sundown, 24/7, for the advantage of white comfort, white wealth, white power, white privilege. And one could say there hasn't been the change that we expected and desired, that we demand today, yet it's coming. It's coming, but it's going to come not because of benevolence or beneficence by them. It'll come when, Yusuf, I think you would agree, our people finally and fully understand our own backbones and stand straight and tall, and determine that we have both the right and responsibility to be co-creators of history, and that our role is to ensure that history is a story that has us as the winner.
And Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without what?
A demand.
Thank you.
Conflict, yeah. And it never has, never will.
Listen, last word. I love you too. I thank you so much for everything that I learned from every time you open your mouths. So I just want to say thank you.
Well, let me say to people that are listening, you know, we want to grow this experience. We've got about 100, 200 subscribers on YouTube right now. Most people are engaged with us through Facebook. We want to grow our presence and our numbers in both platforms. So if you're listening or watching or connecting on YouTube, subscribe.
Spread the word.
My goal is 1,000 subscribers. Help us out. We appreciate you. And like and share to Facebook. This is a critical conversation, and we thank you for being a part of it. I'm Al McFarlane. We'll see you tomorrow.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Wow.
Thank you,
I want to listen to the music.